week I shared my top 10 romances of 2024, but of course I didn't include any Mafia romances, and that was so I could save those for today, and today I'm delighted to share my top 8 Mafia romances of 2024. So as before, I've not actually ranked these as my favourites from 8 to 1. Instead, I'm going to share these in alphabetical order with you. And I have got some cheats in here because I am actually going to be talking about 10 books in total, but 2 of them are actually part of a duet and the other 2 are very closely related, and I'll talk more about those when I get to them. So as I said, I've not ranked these, but I'm going to go through them in alphabetical order, which basically means we're going to start today with Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, and this is book 1 in the Brutal Birthright series. Now so far I've only read 2 books in this series, but I definitely do want to continue making my way through these and onto the Kingmaker series as well. But I finally got around to this one back in March of last year, and I absolutely love this read, in particular because of the antics that go on in here. So this is an Italian-Irish mafia romance where we have an arranged marriage between Callum and Ada, but these 2 are very much enemies to lovers. So like I said, the antics in here are absolutely hilarious, where they're both trying to get one up on each other. So this book starts where Ada and her siblings decide to gate crash a party at Callum's house. They really shouldn't be there, they're really not invited, but they want to kind of snoop around the mansion while they've got the opportunity. And Ada makes her way to the library, where she ends up setting fire to the library and then ultimately stealing Callum's grandfather's pocket watch. And so of course Callum instantly knows it's her, and he goes after her and her brothers, and he starts to beat her brother quite badly, and in retaliation she throws his grandfather's pocket watch into the ocean. And the result of this has stirred up trouble between the families, and so the parents get together and they decide that Callum and Ada should be arranged in marriage in order to nip this feud in the bud and make sure there isn't war between these 2 families. Of course, neither Callum or Ada are too happy about this, and then they set about trying to make each other's lives a bit of a misery by carrying out pranks on one another, and these pranks escalate. Of course, these 2 are going to have great chemistry together, they are going to be really attracted to each other, and so they are going to end up having hate sex as well, and really enjoying it. Loads of other parts of this book that I really enjoyed as well, and that is that Ada is actually a fairly intelligent heroine, and she knows how to work a room. So when Callum needs help with his political career because he's trying to get himself a position in sort of in a government sort of position, she knows a lot of people, is able to sweet talk people at parties, and really is good for his career. And as a result, they kind of make a really good partnership as well, and that's what I kind of really like to see in here. But mostly this book is really easy to read. Sophie Lark has a great writing style where it's just easy to get straight in with these characters, and it was very hijinks and lots of action and a thoroughly enjoyable read, so I would definitely recommend. So next up then we have our first of kind of the duet situation that I talked about. This is not strictly a duet, but I think these books go hand in hand, and while I was thinking about my favourite Mafia romances of 2024, both of these I absolutely loved, and when I was reflecting on which one I preferred over the other, I was really struggling to choose, and then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to talk about them both together because they kind of go together. And of course I'm talking about Darkest Sins by Neva Altaj, which is book 9 in her Perfectly Imperfect series, and then we have Sweet Prison, which is book 10 in the same series. Now, why these books really go together is because they follow Nera and Sahara, who are sisters, and the timeline kind of overlaps. So what we see in the first book, in Darkest Sins, in terms of the plot and storyline, very much kind of connects and intersects with Sweet Prison, and so you absolutely need to read these in order. With a lot of the other books in this series, you can read them out of order if you want to, but these 2 I would highly recommend reading them in this order. So first up then we have Darkest Sins, and we are following Neva and Kai. Now this one is kind of a hidden identity. Kai is a bit of a stalker to start off with. It's an age gap and also a secret baby romance as well. Now Kai we'd actually seen in a previous book, but we'd only seen a small glimpse of him. And we knew from that one that he had been rescued by some of the other mafia sort of characters, where he'd been kept by the Mexicans in a dungeon basically, and had been tortured for some time. And so this is where we get to find out in this story exactly kind of what happened to him, why he was there, and kind of what happened around this set of events. Because Kai is actually born and raised to be an assassin, and a very good assassin at that, but he's really starting to feel like he isn't going to last much longer. This is a very dangerous occupation, right? And he knows he's probably going to be facing the end soon. And in fact, at the start of this book, he goes to unalive some people and actually gets injured while he's there, and then he ends up stumbling into an alley. He's quite severely hurt and he thinks it's going to be the end. But luckily for him, Neva is walking past. She happens to see him, and she is actually studying to be a vet, so she's interning or is working at a veterinary clinic. So she takes him to the clinic and helps him with his injuries and patches him up. And Kai becomes very, very obsessed with her then, and kind of starts to keep an eye on her and stalk her a little bit as well. He wants to make sure that she is safe, but he starts this obsession with her, where he then deliberately injures himself so he has an excuse to go back to the clinic and get her to patch him up. Of course then they start this sort of budding romance. They fall in love with each other, but then when Kai is sent on another mission, this is the point when he gets captured by the Mexicans, and then he completely disappears from Neva's life. The thing is, Neva finds out that she is actually pregnant with his baby, and so this leaves her in quite a predicament, and she is forced then to marry somebody in the mafia so that she can protect herself and her baby, and is forced to do some quite difficult things in order to keep herself safe. Of course, like I said, Kai is going to be rescued from this situation. He does make his way back, but they end up spending 4 years apart, and it's quite brutal for both of them. So I love to actually see the pining between this couple, how much they loved each other and missed each other, and then what was going to happen when Kai finally finds his way back, finds out what's happened to her and all the things she's been dealing with, but also then finds out that he is in fact a father. So absolutely love this one. We have a real tortured hero in here, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And so then we move on to Sweet Prison. So how are these connected? Well, Neva is actually Zahara's sister, and Zahara is the main heroine in this one. And she has been secretly writing to another mafia guy called Massimo, who has been in prison, and he's been in prison for unaliving someone, and he's been in there for 18 years. Now they're actually step siblings, so Massimo is actually the stepbrother of both Neva and Zahara, but Zahara has been writing to this guy in prison. So the thing is, Massimo, although he's been in prison for 18 years, he's effectively been the leader of their mafia family the whole time, and he's been pulling all of the strings from inside prison. And at first it was Zahara and Neva's father who was leading this mafia, and Massimo was telling him what to do. But then their father is killed, and another man takes over. So the second in command, basically the underboss, takes over, and it's this man that Neva ends up having to marry in the previous book, and therefore has to do some nefarious things in order to keep herself and her baby safe. But again, the whole time it's Massimo that's pulling the strings, and Neva has been visiting Massimo in prison to get instructions from him. Meanwhile, she doesn't know at all what is going on, but so Zahara, like I said, has been writing to him in prison, and she has been sharing information. So effectively she's been Massimo's spy. So when people come to him in prison and tell him what's been going on, he doesn't quite know whether to believe them, and so it's Zahara who is able to let him know what's really been going on, and so he can sort out the truth from the lies. And so when he finally comes out of prison, after he's done 18 years in there, Zahara becomes the only real person that he can trust. But of course there's a massive age gap between them. Like I said, they are step siblings, so this is a bit of a taboo situation. However, they didn't really know each other growing up. Nothing untoward has happened to them until Zahara is in her early 20s. And so I absolutely love this one in terms of them building this very slow burn relationship between them, getting to know each other through letters. And like I say, when Massimo finally comes out of prison, Zahara is pretty much the only one he can truly trust, and their relationship kind of develops from there. So I absolutely love both of these stories. Like I said, I could not decide which one I preferred. Both of them were fantastic. Sweet Prison just came out in December, but I think Neva Altaj just gets better and better every time. She literally is knocking these out of the park every time she gives us a new story. So I'm really excited to continue to read more from this author. So then we've got His Tesoro by Emilia Rossi. And this is book 1 in the Empire of Royals series. This is the first book I've read from this author and I absolutely loved it. Now, this is actually my lowest rated book of all of these books I'm going to share with you. I rated it 4 stars. And one of the reasons why it lost a star was because of the third act breakup or conflict in here, which I really did feel didn't do justice to this story or this couple. But the first 80% of this book is absolutely fantastic. And when I was reflecting on all of the Mafia books that I read in 2024, I realised that all I remembered from this book were all of the good parts in it, and I kind of like forgotten about the bad part of this story. And therefore, yes, like I said, it's the lowest rating one of all of these that I am talking about today, but still it was a solid 4 stars. Thoroughly enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed this couple, and we'll be so excited to read more from this author when she brings us some more Mafia Romances later this year. So this one is an Italian-Russian Mafia romance because our hero is the Don of an Italian family and our heroine is part of the Bratva. And obviously there's an age gap between these two, as we see in a lot of these stories, and this one is an arranged marriage because our heroine Sophia, her father, wants to form an alliance with Matteo. Now, Matteo really isn't interested in falling in love and getting married, but he knows he needs to one day. And so when he gets offered an arranged marriage with Sophia, he agrees to it because he's doing it to obviously strengthen his family, give him access to more things with the support of the Bratva. And so he doesn't really pay too much attention to the woman that he's going to marry. In fact, he doesn't even ask to see a photo of her before the wedding because it feels to him like it's irrelevant. Now, he's going to marry this person and he's going to absolutely take care of them, but he has no real intention of really getting to know them or definitely not falling in love with them. So like I say, what this person looks like and their personality and everything is completely irrelevant to Matteo at the start of this story. So as a result, he knows very little about her. But Sophia actually has a disability, and I'm going to read out what it says, what the author's note is in this one, because otherwise I'll get it wrong. So the main character in this book, Sophia, has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a rare genetic connective tissue disorder, and it's complex and often misunderstood. And essentially how it presents itself in this book with Sophia is that she has very, very weakened joints. She finds it difficult and painful to be fully mobile, which means that sometimes she needs walking aids, and she uses a variety of walking aids, including like a walking frame, like a rotunda to get her up and down, and also when she is in particular amount of pain and struggling, she needs a wheelchair as well. Now, unfortunately for her, her father has been very dismissive of her illness and sees it very much as a weakness, and therefore he doesn't want anyone to know that his daughter is suffering from EDS. As a result, he's kind of been keeping her locked away in her room. She doesn't really get out that much, and he hasn't been getting her the medical care that she needs. So even the wheelchair that she's using, she's actually stolen that. She's got her sister and one of the bodyguards has had to steal it because she absolutely needs some assistance getting around. So on her wedding day, not only does Sophia's father not escort her down the aisle, she is actually coming down the aisle in her wheelchair, and Matteo is taken aback by this, and not because this is upsetting to him, but it's the fact that he didn't know. And so he instantly becomes quite protective of Sophia and is a little bit angry with the father that he didn't tell him, because like I said, he doesn't want to fall in love with his wife, but he feels a sense of obligation and he absolutely wants to make sure that she has everything she needs so that she is properly taken care of. So the moment they're married and he gets her home, he sets about getting her everything she needs, the medical care she needs. He gets her a new wheelchair that is more suitable for her. Now still though, he is still wanting to keep his distance, so he kind of gets his people to do all of that. And of course, Sophia is also assigned a bodyguard, and she absolutely wins over her bodyguard, all of his men, and she's fantastic in the kitchen, so she's a great baker as well. And Matteo, little by little, starts to take more of an interest in her, realises what a lovely person that she is, becomes very attracted to her, and starts to get very jealous and possessive because all of his men, you know, like her so much, and he gets quite annoyed when they're all eating her baked goods and there isn't any left for him. So this whole romance and how it comes together is so nice. It actually has Neva Altaj vibes in here in terms of how sweet this hero is. I'm not going to talk about the third act breakup because I've talked about this before, and like I said, it's really the sweet relationship between this couple as we work towards that I particularly enjoyed and remembered, and I was loving every single moment of that book up to that point. So it definitely deserves a spot in here. And like I say, I can't wait until the next book in this series comes out and we will see what Emilia Rossi can do next. Next up, we've got Kingdom Fall by A. Zavarelli, and this one is part of the Underworld King series, which was a collection of mafia stories written by a variety of authors. This one had been on my TBR for ages, and I finally got around to reading this one in December, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, so I'm so glad I finally got around to this one. We were following Natalia and Alessio, and this one is like a nanny, secret society, single dad sort of romance. It's very, very intense. There's great chemistry between this couple, and there's so much sort of mystery and intrigue as well. This is one of the reasons I love this book so much, because I was really, really invested in this mystery and trying to solve this puzzle. Because like I say, Alessio is in this sort of secret society. We don't know much about it. He's obviously got a very senior rank in the society, very highly regarded, and people are afraid of him. He seems to be some sort of master torturer who can get answers out of people, and he's also asked, you know, by different people, he's hired by different people to get secrets out of people that no one else can get out of them, because he's got his own methods of forcing people to talk. We also, Alessio has a little boy who's 6, and that's why this is a nanny romance, because he needs someone to help him look after his 6-year-old boy, and it's recruiting a nanny. And the person who gets hired to do this is Natalia. But we know instantly as the reader that Natalia, while there to be the nanny, there's also something else going on with her. It seems that she doesn't really know anything about Alessio. She doesn't really know who he is, but she's very much targeted him and has infiltrated his house deliberately. And so we're really intrigued to find out why that is, who she is, what the connection is to him. Why is it that she's so adamant to get into his household but doesn't seem to know a lot about him as a person? And so we start to uncover exactly what is going on in here. And like I say, this whole time, therefore, she's a live-in nanny. They're in close proximity together. They have great chemistry together. He is really kind of the sort of person that doesn't want to let anyone in. You know, he's quite a damaged and sort of tortured hero, and he doesn't want to share too much of himself with her. But little by little, she starts to really get under his skin, and they start a relationship together. And she is obviously very conflicted about why she's there, because she knows that if he finds out her true reason for being there, things are not going to go too well for her. But the relationship between this couple is fantastic, and also the relationship that she builds with his son is also great to see. And so overall, I just absolutely love this one. Love the whole atmosphere, the intensity of this book, and like I say, the mystery in here was fantastic. Then another book that I've talked about quite a bit on this channel since I read it is The Sweetest Oblivion by Danielle. Now I know this is a fairly old book now and a well-loved kind of series, but I've been putting this off for quite some time, but I'm so glad I finally got around to this one. So this is book 1 in the Maid series. It's a forbidden romance because we're dealing with a sister's fiance. This is an Italian mafia arranged marriage situation, and also this couple are kind of forced into close proximity, I would say. We were following Elena and Nicholas. Now again, one of the reasons I absolutely love this book was just the intensity of this book. Danielle has got a way of writing that just really sucks you into the story, and the tension in this book is palpable. The sexual chemistry between this couple literally oozed off the page, and you could really feel the you know, the anxiety, the attraction between this couple, and I thought it was fantastically done. There's also a lot of quiet moments in this book what I just thought were done so well. Little moments where this couple were kind of together in the story, but they couldn't really be together, and so you could really feel their connection, but their intensity. And the moments when they kind of interacted, they would have these sort of side conversations with each other, these moments where they bumped into each other were really, really well placed, well paced, and just really helped to really build this relationship, so you really, really understood why they wanted to be together. And what made it particularly great was the fact that our hero in this one, Nicholas, is actually supposed to get married to Elena's sister, and that's the one that he's actually arranged in marriage to. But as these families come together and they start to go to dinners together in the lead up to the wedding, that is when Nicholas and Elena start spending much more time together, and it becomes very clear that Nicholas really doesn't want to marry Elena's sister and he wants to marry her instead. And so I was on the edge of my seat waiting to find out exactly what chain of events were going to happen to make sure that he could get out of the arrangement with the sister and end up with Elena. And I just felt like I really, really wanted this couple to be together. There's also some really amusing parts in this. There is a really sweet kind of old grandma, Nonna. She is sort of one of those wise old Italian sort of women who kind of like observe everything. They kind of know what's going on and they absolutely cannot be fooled, and she cannot be shocked, and she sees everything. And so she is also very observant, and when things go down at different parties, she'll come in with little pearls of wisdom, little nuggets of gold, and some of the things are really funny. There was one particular scene where a fight happens when they're at a dinner party, and Nonna is like, finally the entertainment has arrived, because this party was pretty dull and boring before this fight broke out. So we've got some really great moments and some great characters in here as well. Then the next one, which is the only book that I don't have in physical form, but I will rectify that soon, and that is The Tallest Tower by Emilia Finn, which is book 1 in her Underbelly Enchanted series. In this one we were following Felix and Christabel. This is an enemies to lovers, reverse Grumpy Sunshine, cap to captive situation, and there's also some caretaking in here. Now I read this book all the way back in January, but it's really stuck with me, and in particular the first couple of chapters of this book are quite horrific to read. Emilia Finn really gets this one off to a bang when we kind of have a glimpse of the past, so we can learn what shaped our hero Felix, and some quite horrific things have happened in his past. Now Felix has got a number of brothers. In fact there's 5 of them in total, but they've all got different mothers, and we find out that basically his father was head of the mafia, but a very, very evil mafia don, not the types of mafia dons that we're used to dealing with, and he would really, really mistreat the women in his life, to the point where he would kidnap women, breed them because he was trying to breed an army, and then after the child was born he would then unalive the mothers. So Felix, like I said, has got 4 brothers, but they're all half brothers because they're all from different mothers, and yet none of them were brought up by their mother or know them. So like I said, this book gets off to quite a horrific start, but what it does is really sets the tone for the rest of the series. We really understand why the men in this family behave the way they do, and who they are, and how all the pieces fit together. So we have Felix, our hero then, who is now head of the family. His father is not around anymore, and now he's in charge. And Christabel is a local kind of heiress to a billionaire fortune, because her father owns like a big media company, but in her heart she is a journalist, and so she does work at the paper as a journalist. And she decides that she wants to kind of investigate Felix and his family to try and dig up some dirt on them and expose them for what they really are, which is this mafia family. And so of course Felix is not too happy that she starts digging around in his affairs, and he gets kind of warned by some of his, you know, associates, shall we say, that he needs to kind of shut her up, otherwise she's going to start causing problems for all of them. And so he doesn't quite know what to do with her, but he decides he's going to kidnap her and bring her back to his house. Now this is a bit of a mistake, because obviously he's only got a couple of choices here, and his choices are to unalive her, to completely shut her up, or make her fall in love with him so that she doesn't want to pursue the story anymore. And so that's kind of what happens through this story. Again, we have a really, really feisty heroine in here. She's not going to back down easily, but of course she's going to be in a bit of a captive situation. And when she gets ill, while she's in his care, shall we say, he realises his mistake and then sets about trying to make amends and do some caretaking there as well. So I really love this one. Book 2 is also really good, and book 3 came out just a few days ago in January, so I'll be picking that one up very soon. So of course I couldn't talk about my top 8 Mafia romances without including this one, Twisted Pride by Cora Reilly. So you'll know if you've watched any of my videos before, I've been making my way very slowly through Cora Reilly's backlist, starting with the Born in Blood series, and now I'm into the Cora Chronicles. So I'm up to this book and hoping to read Twisted Bonds next month. So I know that any fans of Cora Reilly always say that Twisted Emotions and Twisted Pride are their favourites of all of the books she's written, and so I was really excited to finally get to Remo's story, because in this one we are following Remo, who heads up the Camorra Mafia in Las Vegas. Now Remo has this reputation for being completely psychotic. He is very violent, very wild, very impulsive, but he absolutely rules Las Vegas with an iron fist. And boy, has he clawed his way to the top, and so he is determined to hold on. The thing is, we know in this world, in this sort of mafia world, there's 2 other mafia families that are pretty much at war, and that is the Outfit in Chicago and the Famiglia in New York. Now, he knows he can't really fight both families at the same time. So in Twisted Emotions, he organises an arranged marriage between his brother Nino and Chiara to unite the Camorra and the Famiglia families together, because the priority is very much the Outfit. They want to take the Outfit down, and in particular, they want their hands on the Outfit's consigliere, who is Scuderi, and also happens to be the father of Fabio, who is another character from this series. So they've really got their sights on Scuderi. They want him, they're going to torture him, and then they're going to unalive him, because that is absolutely what he deserves. And so at the start of this book, Remo has this plan where he is going to kidnap our heroine Serafina while she's on the way to her wedding. She's been arranged in marriage to another very powerful person in the mafia. She's on her way to her own wedding, and he's going to kidnap her while she's wearing her wedding dress, take her captive, and use her then as leverage and exchange her for Scuderi, who is the person they really want. And so this is what happens. He goes in, they get her, they take her back to Las Vegas, and Remo has every intention of breaking this woman. He thinks that she's going to be scared of him, that he's going to be able to get her to do whatever he wants, and he's going to be able to then create videos of her being terrified and like this broken version of herself that he's going to send back to the family in order to convince them to exchange her for Scuderi. Of course, this is called Twisted Pride, and Serafina, our heroine, has got way more pride than Remo suspects, and she is not going to go down without a fight. Yes, she is afraid of him, but she's not going to show that fear. She's going to stand up to him, and she is very clever, because she starts to figure out what buttons she can push to really get under Remo's skin, and boy does she start to push them. And so these two have a very kind of like hate to love situation going on. They're very much enemies, but again, it's another situation where she is his captive, but they are very attracted to one another, and they kind of do a battle with themselves, because they're attracted to each other, kind of want to be with each other physically, but mentally that they know they shouldn't be together, they shouldn't like each other, and they kind of a little bit appalled with themselves that they're in this sort of situation. And in particular, Remo is really struggling, because he just doesn't know what to do with Serafina or his feelings for her. And so it's really interesting to see how this one plays out. Now, ultimately, Remo does get his wish, and he does end up having to trade Serafina for Scuderi, but it's really hard for both of them when he has to let her go. And of course, he's desperately hoping that she has fallen in love with him and will come back to him of her own accord. But when she goes back to her family, it's not going to be as easy for Serafina to do that, or admit that that's what she wants to do. But I absolutely loved how this played out. There's a particular scene in here which I haven't spoken about, because I don't want it to be a spoiler for anyone if you haven't read this already, but it's absolutely fantastic, and how this ends is absolutely brilliant, and I can't wait to read more. So Twisted Pride definitely lives up to all the hype that surrounds it. Would highly recommend. Okay, so now we're on to the final book that is in my top 10, and this is another duet. I couldn't talk about one of these books without talking about both of them, and that is the Fallen God duet by Gabrielle Sands. It starts off with this one, When He Desires, and finishes with this one, When He takes. I love how this kind of duet kind of really plays out. So this is a spin-off from the Fallen series. At the end of that series, Raphael's consigliere Nero ends up having to go on the run for something that happened at the end of that book. So the first book is set very much outside the mafia. It reads much more like a small town contemporary sort of romance, because we've got Nero, he's on the run, he's actually changed his name, so he now goes by the name of Rowan, and he's found himself in this small town of Dark Water. And like I said, he's left the mafia, so he's trying to blend in and be a normal person, and he's actually bought a construction company, and now he basically does up people's houses in this town. And he happens to move in next door to our heroine, who is Blake, and so this then becomes sort of a close proximity neighbours sort of situation. Nero really likes Blake, and he, you know, tries to use his charms on her to get her to go out with him. The thing is though, Blake has just come out of quite a bad relationship. Her ex-boyfriend was sort of cheating on her, he was also gaslighting her, and she really just wants to get out of Dark Water. She wants to sell her house and sort of go and start fresh somewhere else. So when Nero hears that she is going to be selling her house, he kind of panics and thinks, no, I need a bit more time with her, I want to get to know her a little bit more. And so he sets a teeny weeny fire in her house, so that there's some fire damage in the house, and it means that she isn't able to sell it straight away. So then he basically offers her a place in his house. He's like, right, you're just next door anyway, why don't you come and stay with me, I've got a spare room, and I own a construction business, so I'll help you do up the house and get it ready again to sell. And so they kind of enter this arrangement. They also fake date for a little bit as well, because her ex-boyfriend is still around trying to cause trouble for them, and so they kind of pretend that they've kind of moved in together and they're kind of going out. So like I said, this first book really plays out like a small town sort of fake dating, neighbours, friends to lovers sort of read, but underneath it all we know Nero is obviously hiding this secret, and Blake has absolutely no idea who he is. So this is very much a hidden identity. The thing is, Blake's father was actually in a motorbike gang, and so these bikers are still kind of lurking around, causing a bit of trouble. And so Nero really makes a mistake on two fronts. One, when he goes and threatens the ex-boyfriend, and then he gets kind of noticed by these bikers, because then they're going to start to do some digging about who he really is, because they're very suspicious of who this person is. And so the first book ends on a bit of a cliffhanger when Nero's secret is exposed. People now know who he is, and he kind of needs to either go on the run again or go back and kind of confront the reason that he had to run away in the first place. Of course, at this point then, Blake is now in danger, and so he has to take her with him. And so this is a transition then from book one into the second part of this duet, and the second part of this duet then is a fully fledged mafia romance, because now Blake absolutely knows who he is. She's horrified that this man that she fell in love with is this very dangerous consigliere for this mafia. Not only that, he's on the run, and he decides that he's going to confront it head on. He needs to absolutely make sure that Blake is protected, and so he's going to go back to confront the situation, and Nero is going to force Blake to marry him so that he can ensure that she is protected. I absolutely love this duet, and I loved how different these individual books felt, but how they work so well together as a duet, and I thought it was absolutely a brilliant idea and fantastically done, and would highly recommend. So there you go, that is my top 10 Mafia romances that I read in 2024. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me. So all that's left for me to do is thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye. Oh, New York, I said Chicago. I said Chicago, but I mean New York. They cannot be fooled, and they cannot be, what's the word? And you're, cannot be fooled and cannot be, 10 books in total, but I've got a couple of, but I'm going to be talking about 10 books in total, but a couple of these could be considered. And I'm going to be talking about 10 books in here, but one of them is a duet, and the other one is basically a companion